Hello and welcome to Retro Gaming Swede. My name is Oskar and today I'll show you my latest video game pickups. So we'll start off with the oldest ones, and unfortunately I haven't been able to capture any footage from these because my dataset for the Commodore 64 is dead. But first we have Crazy Cars, which is a pretty decent racing game for the Commodore 64. And next up we have a real classic, Rampage, which is pretty fun on the old Commodore. Next up we have a whole bunch of Japanese Famicom games. And I think we'll start off with the most boring ones, which are the baseball games. The first one is called Famista 90. It's a baseball game. Works pretty well. Most of these look pretty much identical. The next one is called Ganbare Pennant Race. Again, this is a baseball game. It does have great music though. Next up we have Super Real Baseball 88. This is basically one of two games where I actually get to hit the ball. But in this game I absolutely can't figure out how to pitch instead. Next up we have a game called Moiro Pro Yakyu. The players in this game look absolutely amazing for an NES game. But I still can't hit the ball. But the pitching works in this game. Then we have two of the same. Pro Yakyu Family Stadium 88. The music is absolutely amazing. And it looks good, but yeah. It's a baseball game. It's nothing super fun. Then we have a classic for those American viewers. Tag Team Pro Wrestling. I have absolutely no idea how to play this, as most wrestling games. I absolutely don't know how to play it. Then we have Tower of Draga. It's a maze game. You're supposed to get the key, get to the door, rinse and repeat through the levels. It's hard as hell, and I just can't get the timing right for the super slow attack. Next up we have a game called SD Gundam Gaiden Night Gundam Monogatari 3 Densetsu no Kishidan. Yes, it has a seriously long name, and it's a Japanese role-playing game. So unless they figure out a way to play it with sort of Google Translate or something, I probably won't be able to play it. And the same thing goes for these. Dragon Quest 1, 2 and 3. They are, of course, absolute classics, and I think it's really fun to have them, but I probably won't play them. Next up we have a game called Motendoji. This is actually a pretty fun action platformer. It looks great, plays really great, but I don't know how to get the dog to help you. you're supposed to get your dog to sort of help out with enemies and stuff like that, but I can't figure out how to do it. But I will definitely play this again somewhere down the line. Next up we have a game called Wierd Pro Soccer. This is probably the worst soccer game I've ever played, and I have played a lot of bad soccer games. It's absolutely horrendous to play. When you run diagonally, the game turns into sort of a slideshow. It's absolutely horrendous. But there is scoring cutscenes in this. Not that I've ever scored. Then we have Soccer League Winners' Cup. And yeah, it's an 8-bit soccer game. It's not good. And you can only use one of the buttons for some reason. Next up, we have Soccer. And it's also a soccer game. That sucks, because that's what soccer games, just like in real life soccer, it sucks. Then we have a weird one called Chib Maruko Chan Uki Uki Shopping. This is sort of a board game style of game. I absolutely don't understand anything about it, but might be some sort of learning game, I'm not sure. Then we have Volgard 2. This is a pretty funny shoot 'em up. It does look pretty bare bones and pretty boring at the start, but then you find out that you can turn into a robot, and that makes it pretty much great. Then we have a real classic, Clu Clu Land. I played this a ton on one of my bootleg games back in the day. Unfortunately, I don't have that anymore, but it was one of those 199 games things, and I think it's really fun, although I haven't played it in over 20 years, so yeah, I kinda suck at it right now. Next up we have two my own games, and I don't understand these at all. I don't think it would have mattered if they were in English. I don't think I would have been able to play them anyway, because I absolutely don't understand how Mahjong works. But if any of you that watches this knows how to play them, please tell me in the comments. Next up we have a game called Argus, or Argus, or whatever you want to call it. This is also a pretty decent shoot 'em up. Controls nicely, looks great. It's pretty fun actually. Next up we have a game called Challenger. This is actually pretty fun. It's hard as balls, but if you're from Sweden, you will recognize the music right away, because it's in the Disney Christmas thing every year. You're supposed to dodge or kill a bunch of birds and bad guys to get to the front of the train to save the girl. Pretty addicting actually. Then we have the classic Pinball. This is I think this game is really underrated. It's pretty fun actually. It's kind of relaxing just to play some slow pinball on your NES console, or Famicom in this case. Next up we have Ye Are Kung Fu. This is a pretty awesome fighting game for the day actually. I think I played this on... I don't know if there was a port for the Commodore 64 back in the day, but I think I played this somewhere before. Maybe on the Commodore 64, but I don't really remember. Next up we have a game called Portopia Rensoku Satajin Yiken. This is some sort of adventure game. I absolutely don't get anything of it. But might be a classic over in Japan. It's made by Enix, so. Next up we have Takeshu no Sengoku Funji. Yeah, I don't really know what this is, but I do think it has something to do with Takeshi's Castle. It's another board game style game, but I don't know how to play it, and it's actually 2-player only. Next up we have a game called Shunan Ashibe Nepal Daibuken no Maki. Yes, I know I am absolutely butchering the names. But yeah, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know how to pronounce these. This is another adventure game. And yes, I don't get anything about that either. Next up we have the two classics. Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Bros. 3. Amazing games, and I don't think I need to talk too much about those. If you've never played a Super Mario game and own an NES, you've clearly done something wrong. Next up, we move on to normal NES games with a game called Breakthrough. This is actually kind of fun. You're playing as a car that can shoot and jump. Pretty fun actually. Hard as balls, but still fun. Next up we have a game called The Adventures of Rad Gravity. I really love how this looks. Your character has this huge head. It's a pretty fun action platformer. Absolutely recommended, and it can usually be found really cheap. Next up we have a game called Infiltrator, and I don't understand anything about this game. It's sort of a helicopter simulator thingy, and the controls are super weird, and yeah, I just don't get it. Maybe it's secretly super easy, but I just can't play it. Next up we have a game called Twin Cobra, which is a shoot 'em up, helicopter based shoot 'em up. Pretty fun game. I actually really enjoy these kind of games, so that was a really solid buy. Next up we have a real classic, Pro Wrestling, which is basically the only wrestling game I can actually win in. Otherwise I absolutely suck at wrestling games for some reason. I just can't get my head around the controls. But I just keep mashing the buttons, and then I actually win. Next up we have another shoot 'em up called Section Z. This is one of those games I had back in the day, and I really played it a lot. I really like it. It's you play as a jetpack a guy flying around shooting stuff, and it's got some pretty nice branching paths, and well, it's a really solid game, which you can also get for rather cheap. Next up is The Goonies 2. Yes, I know I've already talked about this, but I absolutely love this. It's a sort of Metroid style game. We run around in a huge house trying to find the other kids. Absolutely amazing game. It should be played, and the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. Next up we have a game called Tiger Heli. Another shoot 'em up, but I think this is the best of the bunch of the ones I got. I really like this one. It looks great, sounds great, plays great. Next up we have a game called Cybernoid. This is sort of a weird maze-like shoot 'em up game. You go around small rooms and try to shoot everything that moves and avoiding stuff you can't kill. Pretty fun, but not amazing. Next up we have the sequel to one of the most classic games ever, Tetris 2. And yes, this game sucks. Not just because it's a puzzle game, but it's not Tetris. It's a match 3 game. You're not supposed to make lines, you're supposed to match three of the same color. It's not at all as fun as the original Tetris. Next up we have Golf. It's Golf. The next game is Saycross. This is actually pretty fun. It's sort of a hybrid between shooter and a racer. Play as a guy on a bike shooting down enemies or pushing them into the edge of the screen. Really fun actually. Absolutely recommended. Hard as balls, but recommended. The next one is Heavy Barrel. This one is also pretty fun. It's a top-down shooter like what's it called? Ikari Warriors, but not as frustrating, and I actually like this. It looks good and it plays great. Next up we have a game from a series I actually more associate with Sega. Strider. This is actually a pretty solid port, but the grace Strider here you have in the other games are totally gone. You don't jump as fancifully and awesome as in the other games, and yeah, but it's still a fun game. Next up we have Wrath of the Black Manta. This is actually pretty fun. It does play sort of similar to the Shinobi games, and it's absolutely recommended, and this can also be found for super cheap. So yeah, that's strongly recommended if you can find that. Next up we have Elevator Action. This isn't actually one of my favorite games, if you know what I mean, but it's sort of, it's a good port of a good arcade game. It's nothing spectacular, but it's pretty fun actually. The next one up is a real arcade classic, Defender 2. I really enjoy, as I said before, I really enjoy shoot 'em ups, and this is absolutely amazing. It plays absolutely awesome. Next up, we have a bunch of Super Nintendo games. And we'll start off with a game I absolutely adore, even though it's hard as balls. It's a game called Realm. It's sort of a run and gun game, like Gunstar Heroes. Plays really great, really underrated game, and absolutely recommended to play. After that we have Super WrestleMania, and as I said, I'm not a huge fan of wrestling games, and this is no exception. It plays absolutely horrendously to me. I know there's probably a lot of people that love that game, but I'm not one of them. Next up, we have a real turd, Rise of the Robots. This is probably the worst fighting game in the world ever. It's absolutely horrendous to play. It looks absolutely stunning, but it plays like shit. Next up, we have a pretty fun little racing game called Exhaust Heat. This is a really fun Mode 7 racer. Looks great, plays great, absolutely recommended. It's hard as balls in the beginning, but then you can upgrade your car, and then it gets a bit more fun. Next up, we have FIFA Soccer. FIFA International Soccer, actually. And yes, it's a soccer game. Enough said. Next up, we have a game that some people absolutely love to hate. Double Dragon 5. I know a lot of people really hate this game, but I think it's a pretty fun fighting game. Okay, it's not Street Fighter, but every game can't. All games can't be Street Fighter, so it plays okay, it controls okay. It might not be anything I recommend, but it's still not that bad as some people say. Next and last of the Super Nintendo games are Stunt Race FX. This is one of the first games with the Super FX chip in it. It plays absolutely great, it looks absolutely stunning for a Super Nintendo game, and it's absolutely recommended. It's really fun to play, and yeah, controls great, plays great, looks great. Next up, we have an accessory that I've been searching for a decent price, that is, for a good while. The Master System converter for the Sega Mega Drive, or the Power Base converter, as it's called in some regions. These actually go for a pretty penny normally, and I actually found this for a pretty reasonable price. So now I can finally record Master System games in glorious HD. Then we have a real classic for the Sega Dreamcast, Grandia 2. This is a really solid Japanese role-playing game. And yes, if you have a Dreamcast, this is an absolute must-have for the console. Next up, we have a bunch of Xbox games, Xbox 360 games, and one Xbox game that I got for free from a friend called Jocke. So say thank you, Jocke! First off, we have the Xbox game. It's a real classic in my book, Dead or Alive 3. I really like this game. I think it's super fun. But when I captured footage for this, I found a really funny bug. Because I do think Kazumi used to have legs and arms. And not just black bindings. I don't think she's related to Rayman. Next up, we have 3 Assassin's Creed games.
My apologies.
The third one, in a nice steelbook, Black Flag, which is supposed to be really great. I haven't played any of these actually. And Assassin's Creed Revelations. The next game is Digimon All-Star Rumble. This seems to be a pretty fun Super Smash Brothers like game. I don't know much about Digimon, so it might be fun. Next up we have Project Gotham Racing, also known as the game with Geometry Wars in it. This is a really solid racer. Absolutely recommended. You can find it for super cheap, as most Xbox 360 games actually. Next up we have Soul Calibur 5. And yes, I don't think I need to talk about this super much. It's a Soul Calibur game, plays excellent, looks great, it's absolutely super fun to play. Next up, we have a game I really like, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. This is a really fun, loot-based Marvel game. Absolutely recommended if you like that kind of stuff. It plays absolutely amazing and it's really fun. Next up we have one of my favorite games for this generation, Street Fighter X Tekken. This game plays absolutely amazingly. I've played it a ton on the PS3. Looks amazing, plays amazing. An absolute must-have for those systems. Next up we have Army of Two. This is a pretty decent third-person shooter. Nothing super special. Nothing super bad. It's somewhere in between. And next up we have NHL 12. Yeah, I didn't capture anything from that because I just don't want to play it. It's a hockey game. Yay! Next up and last for today we have 2 Guitar Hero games, which I didn't record any footage of either because watching someone play Guitar Hero without the music isn't that fun, and I don't want the YouTube police going after me. So, anyway, that was my gaming haul for February. I know February isn't over yet, but I can't afford to buy any more games this month anyway. So I sort of blew my budget a little bit this month. But I think it's a pretty solid pickup. So, what did you think? Was there any of these games that you really like? Or some of these games that you absolutely hate? Tell me in the comments. And of course, if you want to see more pickup videos and more retro gaming related stuff, press the subscribe button. And hit the bell so you'll be instantly notified when I post something new. I normally post my stuff on my main stuff on Wednesdays, and try to do a live stream at least once a week. So I hope I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.